sorry for the cough, but I got a story to tell you. And it's been on my mind to tell you this story because it's so unusual. All right. My dad was an inventor. He passed away in 2007. He was an inventor. He also had a printing company and he was an engineer. All right. He did a lot of things in his life. He was the kind of guy that a company would hire him and the owner of the company would call him in and he would fix all kinds of stuff. He was a very humble man, but people with wisdom would see his talents. Okay, so my dad had 7 kids, and he did lots of what I would call exploits or in life. Hebrews 11 talks about this. It talks about like the men of faith that these guys did like unusual things, like like anybody can be that person, okay? But he would do like great things in his life. He didn't just waste his life, so to speak. And that doesn't matter. And no matter what age you are, you can do exploits. But today I want to talk to you about what happened when my daddy passed away. First of all, I was absolutely heartbroken because my dad and I were close, and I had intended to move down to where he was because Mom and Dad moved from New York to Arkansas to retire. I was heartbroken because not only did my dad leave, but it was like a mass exodus of my huge family to live near him. Nieces, nephews, all kinds of people. All right, so here I was. I moved out of my big house into my renter. I was going to move south and join my family. So Daddy passes away. I'm having marriage trouble, meanwhile, with my ex-Rex, so to speak. Clay's my new husband. Okay, so my I went down to see my dad, and then some of the other people in my family that live far away had to fly in too, because I mean, remember, my dad was like 77, and all of us were older. Some had to fly in, and some were living there. So it worked out that my dad, all of his 7 kids, came to see him on his deathbed. Now, Daddy couldn't talk or couldn't do anything. He was laying in his deathbed. When he was passing, when he was there, everybody was saying their goodbyes because it was like we got that phone call like, Daddy's not going to make it, come fly down. So I remember as I was talking to Daddy, I felt like there was a big angel standing next to him waiting for everyone to say goodbye. And when I came in to see my dad, because he couldn't talk or anything, I sang, because I was alone with him for a minute, I sang Jesus Loves You to him. Now, later on, I found out that another one of my sisters sang that to him too. And then, I can't remember, but I think somebody else said, I think my other sister said she felt like she saw that angel there too. And it was weird because I actually felt like I could feel my dad almost like praying a little bit too while I was there. And I remember that I had gotten a prayer cloth. I don't know if you ever heard of what they are. And I don't know why, but I just wanted a prayer cloth. And I don't know if you've ever heard of them. It's like people pray over prayer cloths. And like sometimes it talks about them in the Bible. Like people, talks about Paul putting handkerchiefs on people and they would be healed and stuff. But anyway, so it was actually a Jewish prayer shawl is what I had, and we put that on my dad. But anyway, so we were trying to get a hold of Billy and Brandon. They were two of my dad's. They were our nephews, but it was almost like Joseph. If you know in the Bible, like Joseph had 2 sons that actually became like the sons of Israel, their father. It was like they were two of my nieces and nephews, but they were almost like extra kids that the Lord gave my dad. So we were waiting for them to see my dad. They were like nervous about seeing him because they didn't want to see him pass away and stuff. But this is what happened. They were the very last people to go see my dad. And they were, oh my, they must have been in their 30s. And so what they did was they went in to say goodbye to Grandpa, which was like their dad, really. And when they even though they had a father, it was weird because it was just the way it was with them. They always lived with my dad and mom from the time that they were little. My parents had a huge home, and my one sister and her husband, they lived with mom and dad forever. You know, like from the time they got married, mom and dad had like 2 kitchens and 4 living rooms. They had a huge home. But anyway, what happened was when they came in and said goodbye to my dad. This is the story that I thought you'd be interested in. This part. There was a big. It was like a nice day. There was a big clap of thunder, and my dad passed. And the boys said goodbye to Dad, and it was just like it was almost like God said, "This is a great man leaving this earth." Isn't that neat? I love that story about my dad. My mom and dad, like I said, they printed Christian literature. He also printed literature for just businesses. Business owners would always seek him out to do like their business literature. Sometimes there'd be guys like, say there was a company, and then like I said, there'd be like 5 guys in the company or something that were going to start a new business. It was just weird. He would have like, when I was growing up in my life, we had missionaries from around the world that would come to our home and visit with us. And we had businessmen from big companies that would come and they would be in our home. And mom and dad taught us, like they entertained them. And I mean, it was quite elaborate, And so we had like missionaries and church people, and we had business owners. We're not talking like little business owners, like people from around the world would come into our home. And my mom and dad, like our pictures and stuff were around the world when we were little, because I've had, like, I'm in a book, and I've like I said, there's like all kinds of stuff. Like there's a book that was written about our family, and there's just all kinds of stuff like that, because my dad was a very great man. But, excuse me, but he was very humble. He was extremely humble. Like, if you came up to him and you didn't know him, he'd say, "Well, what do you do?" He'd say, he would just joke around and say something funny to me, because he was a jokester. But I thought that was a really neat story. He was a very, very great man. He was a very giving man. I don't always like to share all this stuff, but he would, like, give things to churches, like, money. He'd see people, he'd give money. That's the thing, is there's a lot of people out there that are very godly, and like they give and give and give and give, and he was one of those people. Like he would, like, if he would find somebody that was maybe like had nobody, he would move them into our home. I'm sure he prayed about it. He would buy them all their clothes, take care of them, give them a job. He would help people like that. And anybody. He might not even move you into our home. There might be somebody he knew that there was a need. He would buy and do things for people in churches and pastors and just anybody. He would help people even if they weren't church people. He would help people that, just anybody that he would, he would do great things. Let's put it that way. And he instilled greatness in his kids. And one of the greatest things that Daddy taught us, and Mom, of course, and Mama's still living, he taught us to love God. Not just to know the Bible, but to actually love Jesus. And it wasn't like, we didn't grow up like, like our faith stuck like honey. Honey, it stuck because we saw what it was to be a real Christian. And I saw people do terrible things to my dad, and he'd say nothing. Nothing bad. He would just be like a really sweet guy. He would never retaliate or be mean. Nobody did really that many mean things to him. But say, example, if somebody, I don't know, maybe they hit his car or something, and they would yell and scream, my dad would just be real humble and not say nothing. He wasn't the kind of guy. He was not confrontational at all. He wasn't afraid to stick up for himself. He would speak the truth. A lot of times he would say to guys, he'd say, so maybe to somebody who's trying to help, "You stink, you need to take a bath. You can't get a job if you don't take a bath." So he was bold, but he would tell people things because he'd be like a father. And basically that's what I feel like my dad was, like a father to a lot of people. He was like that guy that He was sweet and nice, but he was also not afraid to speak up and help people so that they would be a success in life. And there's a lot of people that looked up to my dad. And but the story of his death I thought was so interesting. I thought that was really neat. I never knew anybody that died like that. And I thought, wow. And then now, okay, now we'll go to part two. All right. Now, of course, Daddy was eccentric. So, like, he would wear, like, the big hat with a big old feather and a purple shirt and purple pants. He was fun. And so, I mean, obviously, I mean, I don't know, he just was fun. He was like real fashion conscious and stuff. It was a lot of fun. Like in his closet, they had like mirrors all around their bedroom. Here's a Mom and Dad were in love, but behind those mirrors were tons of clothes. He'd have a yellow suit coat, a purple, a pink, whatever, So he loved fashion. But when he passed away, we knew that he wanted to be buried in his purple shirt, so we put that on him. I went to the funeral parlor because my personality's a lot like my dad's, and he goes, "Well, what kind of casket?" I said, or something, and we were talking about something, and I said, "Well, it doesn't have to be too secure," I said, "because he's just gonna pop out and go up in the rapture." My dad would laugh at that, and then because I know my dad and I, we used to vacation and stuff together, and he'd be laughing, because he's like me. It's like I say, when I die, they better be throwing themselves on the casket, saying, "Oh, she's dead, she's dead." If I didn't do my job, you know, they better be crying and wailing, right? But anyway, at his funeral, this is so cute. One of the kids, which was Billy, that was like the second son, his baby was probably 2. So my dad's laying in the casket, and she's going. I mean, I know you probably shouldn't bring babies to funerals, but she did. Her mama did. But we're family. The kid goes, the little girl goes, "There's Papa. There's Papa." He's laying down. So I took it really hard after my dad died. I mean, I was okay, but I really felt like there was a big hole in my heart. And actually, I feel like when I met Clay, it filled that hole. I mean, I just felt empty because I love my daddy. He was like my rock, my anchor. If I had a problem, I'd go to him. I said to him one time, "Daddy, how did you learn to do all these things?" He said, "I'd pray and God would teach me," because he was an inventor. And so I learned that when I want to do something, I just pray and ask God. And you know what? He tells me. You can laugh all you want. I have stories to tell. But anyway, that's the story of a great man of God, which is my daddy's. He's a wonderful man. He's living up in heaven now. And when he died down in the south, when he did die, they used a white casket, and they call it the celebration of life, compared to the north where they use black caskets and everything. But I just, he served in the military and did all that stuff. He was a very, very good man. He loved my mother desperately. He loved his children. He was a godly man. And, I mean, he wasn't perfect. When he was, if he was younger, he, but but he finished his course. I mean, meaning that, like all of us, I'm sure he went through his stuff, but I have to honestly say that he showed me what being a Christian was about. So, anyway, I think that's what a real Christian is. They're real people. They're not goofy. They're not like, we lived at Bible school for a while, and some people would be like raising their hands, "Oh Lord, bless the food." And my parents were on staff because my dad was, another thing my dad did, left his home, left his business, brought all of his kids up to this Bible school to teach them, which was good, to teach them how to, to get their printing business started. But he would see students at the, "Oh Lord, bless the food." He'd slap their hand and he'd say, "See that over there? That's the president of the school. He's not praying like that. You don't need to be doing that stuff." He was a real father, but he was, always trying to help people for life so that they wouldn't look weird and odd and stuff like that. Because, some of these people, they don't have somebody, but it was probably one of the guys he was training in his print shop because they got really close. And another thing my dad would do, because, kids go up there, he would take like whole groups of people out to eat on his dime. So, like, you can imagine if you lived up at a Bible school and maybe you were counting your dimes, he would take, like, whole groups of people out to eat. After church, he would invite whole people, like the pastor and their family and friends, and he'd pay the bill because my dad had a good salary. And, God wants us to have the frosting on the cake. I mean, this isn't something that Daddy would never want us to share all this when he was living. But I know that he wouldn't care now because it's a testimony. And it's a testimony about, people. There are lots of born again businessmen. And in fact, Daddy was one of the people that helped bring Full Gospel Businessmen to Syracuse years and years ago. Some of you have ever heard of that. It's like where businessmen all get together and that are Christians because, God needs money. And sometimes he raises up guys and people that are businessmen so that they can take their money and help and build the kingdom of God and help other people and start businesses to give people jobs and all that kind of stuff. And so, some people, like I think the Bible talks about, well, it does talk about the gift of giving. And sometimes God gives people the knowledge to have a good career. Not everybody's called to be a pastor. Some people are called that the gifts of administration and stuff like that. They start a big business and then they help people. And I know another guy that used to work for Kmart, and he made a really good buck, and he would help other people like that. And he had a beautiful home and beautiful things and did similar things. And there's a lot of good businessmen out there. I mean, if you're a businessman and you're hearing this, go up a level. You might be making twice as much. You might not need the stock market and investments because when you work for God, he owns the cattle on 1,000 hills. He'll open up the deals. He'll open up the issues. He'll bring the customers in. He'll do it all. You don't have to work. All you got to do is just pray and obey. Pretty easy, isn't it? And if you have the liberal soul shall be made fat. So if you bless others, God will bless you. Sometimes he teaches us things, and you got to learn when to give and when not, because sometimes you can change people's lives if you give them money and they're not supposed to have it. You got to be a person of prayer and stay right with God. So I could go on and on and on forever about this stuff, but it's pretty exciting. But I felt like I wanted to share that story with you guys. I thought you guys might enjoy it. I hope it grows your vision to be that man, to be that person, that woman, that man, that, pray for creative ideas. Maybe you're supposed to be the next guy that makes a ton of money to help a bunch of people. Or maybe you just need to see that there's good people out there, Anyway, remember, big or small, truck's coming by. Another one. Looks like they got horses. Okay, remember, big or small, you too can be a backyard farm. God bless.